Hello class 8 and welcome to another social science class. So students, if you remember, then last week we completed the chapter The Indian Constitution from your social and political life book. So this brings us to discuss the textual question answers today. But before sharing with you the question answers from your textbooks, I would like to give you all an explanation, or rather a summary, through which you will be able to recapitulate all the important points related to the chapter, and also you will be able to recall everything that we have discussed so far. So students, without wasting much time, let us begin understanding and recapitulating everything from the chapter. And after watching the video, don't forget to click on the PDF, download the PDF, and then go through the question answers which I have given, and then write those down in your notebooks.
So let us begin our discussion by understanding the meaning of constitution once again. So what is a constitution? A constitution is a set of rules. A set of detailed rules through which a country is administered, or through which a democratic country is run. So a constitution may be a written one or an unwritten one. In India, we have a written constitution. So in the written form, the constitution looks like a document, and in the unwritten form, they are just conventions which people has been following in that country since ages. So now let us try to understand once again the need or the importance of a constitution. So in most countries of the world, there is a constitution. But just because there is a constitution, it does not necessarily make a country democratic. Alright, in order to ensure that a country is democratic, it should be able to have such a constitution through which we can understand the nature of the society where we live in. So it is the constitution which tells us the rules of the country, and it also enables us to understand the principles that are to be agreed upon by each and every individual and each and every community in the country. Let us take the example of Nepal here. I hope you remember this example very well. So in Nepal, there was a constitution in 1990, but people were not happy about the constitution because it did not reflect the goals and aspirations of the citizens of Nepal. The final power in that constitution of Nepal in 1990 was rested ultimately in the monarch or the king. But people wanted to establish democracy, and hence a movement started, a struggle started, and ultimately the people of Nepal got the freedom from the king by abolishing his title, not the title, but by abolishing his official powers that were given by the constitution. And then finally democracy was established in the year 2006. So the people in Nepal, although they had a constitution in 1990 and even after that, till 2006 we cannot still call it to be a democratic country. It was very much a monarchical country. A monarchical form of government was working there, and people wanted to establish democracy, because of which there was a violent movement, we can say. And ultimately in 2007, the people of Nepal adopted the new constitution. So this brings us to the first need or the first importance of a constitution, that is, it reflects the ideals of our country. It tells us about the nature of country where we live in. Now let's come to the second important purpose of a constitution. So the second important purpose of a constitution is to tell us about the political system of the country, whether it is a democracy, whether it is a monarchy, in what way the government will be ruled, in what way the people who represents us will be elected, and so on. So basically everything about the political setup of the country, about the decision making of the country, everything is being said by the constitution. So in the Constitution of India, it is clearly written down that the people have got the power to elect their representatives who will act as the leaders of the country and who will take decisions on behalf of the common people. Again, there is a chance whereby leaders might misuse their power. They might use their power illegally by going against the constitution. So in that case, in order to avoid such misuse, there are many laws which are being written down in the Constitution. And there is part 3 in the Constitution which tells us about the fundamental rights. So in the fundamental rights, we have the right to equality. It means that nobody, not even the government, has got the power to misuse its power to against us. All right. So in other way, we cannot be treated in an unjust manner. We have to be treated well. And also, the Constitution has made sure that we as citizens who elect the people, we can criticize the government whenever required. We can give public opinions through which the government can be criticized and through which the government can come back to the right track and do their duties well. So when we talk about misuse of authority and power, we also at times tend to see that majority group of people, they tend to subjugate the minority people. Okay, I think by now you already know the meaning of majority and minority. So in order to safeguard the minority also, our constitution has ensured that there are several measures through which the minority rights can be protected. And this also comes within part 3 of our constitution, that is the fundamental rights. So this was the second need or importance of a constitution. It says that through the constitution, we are able to understand the political system of the country. Then the third significant reason why we need a constitution is to save us from ourselves. It means that because we have a constitution, we cannot take a decision just like that out of emotions. At times, we may feel like criticizing democracy. Yes or no? But this does not mean that we let go of democracy and welcome dictatorship or monarchy for that example. All right. So in order to ensure that the democratic structure of the society is not changed, the constitution is made a rigid one. It means that we cannot change the provisions of the constitution just like we want. I hope you understood, students. So these are the basic requirements or the basic needs of a constitution, which every democratic country in the world perhaps has. So first was, it helps us to know about the nature of the country. Secondly, it helps us to understand the political system of the country. And thirdly, it helps us to save ourselves, isn't it? All right. So now let us go back to a brief history of the Indian Constitution before going to the key features. So in the 20th century, the national movement, that means the movement for independence from the British, was at its peak. That means what was at its heights. So during this freedom struggle, our leaders kept on planning and strategizing as to what free India would look like. See, when our leaders were subjugated under the British, at that time they were forced to do whatever the British wanted. But our Indian people had a lot of dreams to establish, to fulfill. And that is why they planned that we will have a constituent assembly for ourselves, and through that constituent assembly we will be making a constitution for our democratic country. We won't be ruling the country by the rules that have been set up by the British government. So our leaders always dreamt of establishing democracy. And in this way, around 300 people of the national movement, they came up and they formed the Constituent Assembly in 1946. And these 300 people, they kept on meeting periodically for more than 2 years, for almost 3 years, we can say, to write down the vast Constitution of India. So, writing this constitution was not a very easy task, because our Constituent Assembly leaders faced a lot of problems while writing down this constitution. Firstly, our constitution makers had to keep in mind that India is a country which is full of diversities. There are people speaking different languages, following different religions, following different traditions, etc., etc. So while making the constitution, the demands, the aspirations and the wants of all these communities were to be kept in mind, which is definitely not an easy task. After that, while writing the constitution, India got independence. So the constitution was started to be written in 1946 and India got independence in 1947. So with the independence of India came the partition of India into India and Pakistan. So because of this, there was a big emotional problem, we can say. People were becoming emotional because most of the Constituent Assembly members also now belong to the so-called Pakistan. So that is why there was a lot of problem in framing the constitution. So another problem was the problem of the princely states. I hope you remember what are princely states. So those states which were during the British time ruled by the local kings or princes. So these princely states, they did not know whether to join India or Pakistan once India got freedom. So the princely states remained a problem because they could not decide. And lastly, the Britishers looted India out of all its resources and wealth. So India's socio-economic problem was very, very poor. There was unemployment, there was poverty, there was illiteracy, and so many other social as well as economic problems. So because of all these things, there were a lot of trouble which our Constituent Assembly makers had to face. But of course, our leaders were experts in their field, and that is why they were able to come up with the document called as the Indian Constitution, and they also tried to ensure that in the future, if there is any problem in the country, then this constitution will be able to solve those problems. So keeping in mind all the aspirations and aims and goals of the people of India, and also trying to eradicate or remove all the socio-economic problems of the country, our constitution was finally framed, and it was drafted under the leadership of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, and the president of the Constituent Assembly was Dr. Rajendra Prasad. And also, our constitution was adopted in 1949 and it started to be enforced from the year 1950. So now, let us recall the various features. So what were the features, students? The first feature was, it was federalism. The second was parliamentary form of government. Third, separation of power. Fourth, fundamental rights. And fifth, secularism. So we will discuss this now, and I hope with our discussion you are also able to recall as to what I have told you all these previous days, isn't it? Federalism. So federalism is a system of government in which there is more than one set of government. For example, in India, we have one set in the center, one set in the state, and the last set or the third set in the local level. So a country where there is not just a central government, but there is a share of power among the states as well as the local bodies, that is a federal country. And in India, our constitution makers decided to adopt a federal country or a federal setup because India is a vast country. So to solve local problems, it is not necessary to contact the central government. All right. So for the smooth running of our country and for the efficiency of the administration, our leaders or our constitution makers have decided to go for a federal setup. The next is parliamentary form of government. So parliamentary form of government means that we, the common people, we have the power to elect our leaders with the help of universal adult suffrage. Universal adult suffrage means any citizen of India who is above the age of 18, they have the right to vote and elect their own representatives. And the representatives are elected in two houses of the parliament, Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha. And these ministers who are elected to the Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, they are all accountable to the common people, or they are responsible to the common people. We can question them if necessary, and they are bound to answer us. All right. After that, let's move on to the third feature. The third feature is separation of powers. So separation of power means that the government of India has got three different organs: legislature, executive, and judiciary. All these three organs have got different works and different tasks to do. So the constitution has divided the work of these three organs in a very systematic manner. All right. And also, the constitution has ensured that these three organs do not become overpowerful. And that is why there is a system of keeping a check, okay, or keeping a eye, so that they do their functions that is allotted and do not misuse their power. Then let's go to the very important feature, that is the fundamental rights. So fundamental rights is consisted in part 3 of the Indian Constitution, and it is perhaps the most important part of the Constitution. It is so important that it is called the conscience of the Indian Constitution, or it is the soul of the Indian Constitution. So the fundamental rights guarantee that each citizens, they will be able to enjoy certain rights through which they will be able to become responsible citizens by developing their overall personality. So our constitution accordingly first gave us a set of 7 fundamental rights, but later on right to property was taken away, and that is why now we are left with only 6 fundamental rights, which are very, very important. So you can see the list in the blue color box given. Right to equality is number 1, right to freedom, right against exploitation, right to freedom of religion, cultural and educational rights, and rights to constitutional remedies. So we are left with these 6 fundamental rights, which are very basic to us. And these are so important that even the government cannot touch these rights. Even the government cannot take away these rights from us. So apart from these rights, we have another section or another part in the constitution, which is called the directive principles of state policy, which comes under part 4 of the Indian Constitution. So these directive principles, they are very important because they act as guidelines for the government so that they can work for the welfare of the people. All right. So before moving on to the next feature, I just skipped something, and that is the main objectives which Dr. B.R. Ambedkar pointed out while framing the fundamental rights. So the first objective, he said that every citizen must be in a position to enjoy these rights. So as long as you are an Indian citizen, you should be able to enjoy these rights. You should be aware that you have got certain rights given by the Constitution, and those should be enjoyed by you. And secondly, these rights must be binding upon every authority that has got the power to make laws. So no matter whoever make a law in the country, be it the legislature, be it the judiciary, when they make a law, they have to keep in mind that the fundamental rights of the people are not violated. All right, so this is all about fundamental rights. Now this brings us to the last feature that has been given in your textbook as far as the Indian Constitution is concerned, and that is secularism. So secularism means that no country, that means no democratic country which has a state religion, that is a secular state or a secular country. So a secular country is that which does not support any official religion. For a secular country, or for those countries which practice secularism, all religions are equal. No matter what religion you belong to, you are ultimately equal in front of the eyes of law or the government, and the government cannot misuse their power by treating some other religions as minor religions. And in India, we are definitely following secularism because our government does not promote any religion as such. So students, this is all about the chapter in brief. I tried to cover up everything within a span of just 20 minutes. So I hope that you all understood whatever I have said. I hope you all recalled whatever I said and whatever has been discussed in the last few classes. I request you all, please go through the explanations, as much as you can so that you are left with no doubts. And the best tip to understand everything is by reading the textbook, by reading the lesson once you go through all the explanations, and also by this recapitulating video. So students, let us now come back to the next important thing that we are going to do today. So today I'll be giving you the exercise questions and answers, as I told you. So we will be doing question number 1, question number 2, question number 3, and question number 5. So these 4 questions are to be done in your notebook by looking into the PDF that I'll be sharing with you once this video is given. So students, I hope the chapter is clear to you. Please give a very thorough reading. I repeat, I keep on repeating this point. Thoroughly go through all the points in your textbook, and I'm sure that after that you will be left with no doubt. So all the best students with this lesson, and also all the best for writing the answers which will be provided to you shortly. Thank you.